Audio Literature presents The Teachings of Zen Master Dogen from Moon in a Dewdrop, selected and read by Gary Snyder.
On the Endeavor of the Way, Bendo Wa. All Buddha Tathagatas, who directly transmit inconceivable Dharma and actualize supreme perfect enlightenment, have a wondrous way, unsurpassed and unconditioned. Only Buddhas transmit it to Buddhas without veering off. Self-fulfilling samadhi is its standard. Sitting upright, practicing Zen, is the authentic gate to the unconfined realm of this samadhi. Although this inconceivable Dharma is abundant in each person, it is not actualized without practice, and it is not experienced without realization. When you release it, it fills your hand. How could it be limited to one or many? When you speak it, it fills your mouth. It is not bounded by length or width. All Buddhas continuously abide in it, but do not leave traces of consciousness in their illumination. Sentient beings continuously move about in it, but illumination is not manifest in their consciousness. The concentrated endeavor of the way I am speaking of allows all things to come forth in enlightenment and practice, all inclusiveness with detachment. Passing through the barrier and dropping off limitations, how could you be hindered by nodes in bamboo or knots in wood? After the thought of enlightenment arose, I began to search for Dharma, visiting teachers at various places in our country. Then I met priest Myo Zen of Kennin Monastery, by whom I was trained for 9 years. Thus I learned a little about the teaching of the Rinzai school. Priest Myo Zen alone, as a senior disciple of ancestor Eisai, correctly transmitted the unsurpassable Buddha Dharma. No one can be compared with him. Later, I went to great Sung Dynasty China, visited masters on both sides of the Zhe River, and heard the teachings of the 5 schools. Finally, I studied with Zen Master Rujing of Taibo Peak and completed my life's quest of the great matter. Then, at the beginning of the Shaoding era of Great Sung, I came back to Japan with the hope of spreading the teaching and saving sentient beings, a heavy burden on my shoulders. However, I will put aside the intention of having the teaching prevail everywhere until the occasion of a rising tide. I think of wandering about like a cloud or a waterweed, studying the breeze of the ancient sages. Yet there may be true students who are not concerned with fame and gain, and who allow their thought of enlightenment to guide them, and they may be confused by incapable teachers, and obstructed from the correct understanding. Indulging in smug self-satisfaction, they may sink into the land of delusion for a long time. How can they nourish the correct seed of prajna, transcendent wisdom, and have the opportunity to attain the way? If I am wandering about, which mountain or river can they call on? Because I feel concern for them, I would like to record the standards of Zen monasteries which I personally saw and heard in southern China, as well as the profound principle which has been transmitted by my master. I wish to leave for students of the way the teaching of the Buddha's house. This is indeed the essence. Now, the great master, the Buddha Shakyamuni, entrusted the Dharma to Mahakashyapa at the assembly on Vulture Peak. It was then correctly transmitted from ancestor to ancestor down to Venerable Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma himself went from India to China and entrusted the Dharma to the great master Huike. This was the beginning of the Dharma transmission in the eastern country of China. In this way, by direct transmission, it reached the 6th ancestor, Zen Master Dajian. Then the true Buddhist teaching spread in China, and the teaching that is not concerned with theories took form. At that time, there were two outstanding disciples of the sixth ancestor, Nanyue and Qingyuan. They both equally received the Buddha seal as masters of human beings and devas. Their two lineages spread, and later the five gates opened, the Fa-Yun school, the Guiyang school, the Caodong school, the Yunmen school, and the Linji school. At present, in Great Sung Dynasty China, only the Linji school prospers throughout the country. But in spite of their different styles, each of the five houses holds the single seal of the Buddha mind. In China, after the later Han Dynasty, the teachings of Buddhist scriptures were introduced and spread all over the land, but there was no conclusive teaching as yet. When Bodhidharma came from India, the root of twining vines was immediately cut off, and the pure, single Buddha Dharma spread. We should hope that it will be like this in our country. Now, all ancestors and all Buddhas who uphold Buddha teachings have made it the true path of enlightenment to sit upright, practicing in the midst of self-fulfilling samadhi. Those who attained enlightenment in India and China all followed this way. It was done so because teachers and disciples personally transmitted this excellent method as the essence of the teaching. In the authentic tradition of our teaching, it is said that this directly transmitted, straightforward Buddha Dharma is the unsurpassable of the unsurpassable. From the first time you meet a master, without engaging in incense offering, bowing, chanting Buddha's name, repentance, or reading scriptures, you should just wholeheartedly sit and thus drop away body and mind. When even for a moment you express the Buddha's seal in the three actions, by sitting upright, in samadhi, the whole phenomenal world becomes the Buddha's seal, and the entire sky turns into enlightenment. Because of this, all Buddha Tathagatas, as the original source, increase their Dharma bliss and renew their magnificence in the awakening of the way. Furthermore, all beings in the 10 directions and the 6 realms, including the lower 3 realms, at once obtain pure body and mind, realize the state of great emancipation, and manifest the original face. At this time, all things realize correct awakening. Myriad objects partake of the Buddha body, and, sitting upright, like a king under the Bodhi tree, you immediately leap beyond the boundary of awakening. At this moment, you turn the unsurpassably great Dharma wheel and expound the profound wisdom, ultimate and unconditioned. Because earth, grass, trees, walls, tiles, and pebbles all engage in Buddha activity, those who receive the benefit of wind and water caused by them are inconceivably helped by the Buddha's guidance, splendid and unthinkable, and awaken intimately to themselves. Those who receive these water and fire benefits spread the Buddha's guidance based on original awakening. Because of this, all those who live with you and speak with you will obtain endless Buddha virtue and will unroll widely inside and outside of the entire universe the endless, unremitting, unthinkable, unnameable Buddha Dharma. Grass, trees, and lands which are embraced by this teaching together radiate a great light and endlessly expound the inconceivable, profound Dharma. Grass, trees, and walls bring forth the teaching for all beings, common people as well as sages. And they, in accord, extend this teaching for the sake of grass, trees, and walls. Thus, the realm of self-awakening and awakening others invariably holds the mark of realization with nothing lacking, and realization itself is manifested without ceasing for a moment. This being so, the zazen of even one person at one moment imperceptibly accords with all things and fully resonates through all time. Thus, in the past, future, and present of the limitless universe, this meditation carries on the Buddha's teaching endlessly. Each moment of zazen is equally wholeness of practice, equally wholeness of realization. This is not only practice while sitting, it is like a hammer striking emptiness. Before and after, its exquisite peal permeates everywhere. How can it be limited to this moment? Hundreds of things all manifest original practice from the original face. It is impossible to measure. Know that even if all Buddhas of the 10 directions, as innumerable as the sands of the Ganges, exert their strength, and with the Buddha's wisdom try to measure the merit of one person's zazen, they will not be able to fully comprehend it. Actualizing the fundamental point. Genjo Koan. As all things are Buddha Dharma, there is delusion and realization, practice and birth and death, and there are Buddhas and sentient beings. As the myriad things are without an abiding self, there is no delusion, no realization, no Buddha, no sentient being, no birth and death. The Buddha way is basically leaping clear of the many and the one. Thus there are birth and death, delusion and realization, sentient beings and Buddhas. Yet, in attachment, blossoms fall, and in aversion, weeds spread. To carry yourself forward and experience countless things is delusion. That countless things come forth and experience themselves is your awakening. Those who have great realization of delusion are Buddhas. Those who are greatly deluded about realization are sentient beings. Further, there are those who continue realizing beyond realization, who are in delusion throughout delusion. When Buddhas are truly Buddhas, they do not necessarily notice that they are Buddhas. However, they are actualized Buddhas who go on actualizing Buddhas. When you see forms or hear sounds fully engaging body and mind, you grasp things directly. Unlike things and their reflections in the mirror, and unlike the moon and its reflection in the water, when one side is illuminated, the other side is dark. To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things. When actualized by the 10,000 things, your body and mind, as well as the bodies and minds of others, drop away. No trace of realization remains, and this no trace continues endlessly. When you first seek Dharma, the great truth, you imagine you are far away from its environs. But Dharma is already correctly transmitted. You are immediately your original self. When you ride in a boat and watch the shore, you might assume that the shore is moving. But when you keep your eyes closely on the boat, you can see that the boat moves. Similarly, if you examine myriad things with a confused body and mind, you might suppose that your mind and nature are permanent. When you practice intimately and return to where you are, it will be clear that nothing at all has an unchanging self. Firewood becomes ash, and it does not become firewood again. Yet do not suppose that the ash is future and the firewood past. You should understand that firewood abides in the phenomenal expression of firewood, which fully includes past and future, and is independent of past and future. Ash abides in the phenomenal expression of ash, which fully includes future and past. Just as firewood does not become firewood again after it is ash, you do not return to birth after death. This being so, it is an established way in the Buddhist teachings to deny that birth turns into death. Accordingly, birth is understood as no birth. It is an unshakable teaching in Buddha's discourse that death does not turn into birth. Accordingly, death is understood as no death. Birth, or life, is an expression complete in this moment. Death is an expression complete in this moment. They are like winter and spring. You do not call winter the beginning of spring, nor summer the end of spring. Enlightenment is like the moon reflected on the water. The moon does not get wet, nor is the water broken. Although its light is wide and great, the moon is reflected even in a puddle an inch wide. The whole moon and the entire sky are reflected in dewdrops on the grass, or even in one drop of water. Enlightenment does not divide you, just as the moon does not break the water. You cannot hinder enlightenment, just as a drop of water does not hinder the moon in the sky. The depth of the drop is the height of the moon. Each reflection, however long or short its duration, manifests the vastness of the dewdrop and realizes the limitlessness of the moonlight in the sky. When the Dharma does not fill your whole body and mind, you think it is already sufficient. When Dharma fills your body and mind, you understand that something is missing. For example, when you sail out in a boat to the middle of an ocean where no land is in sight, and then view the four directions, the ocean looks circular and does not look any other way. But the ocean is neither round nor square. Its features are infinite in variety. It is like a palace. It is like a jewel. It only looks circular as far as you can see at that time. All things are like this. Though there are many features in the dusty world and the world beyond conditions, you see and understand only what your eye of practice can reach. In order to learn the nature of the countless things, you must know that although they may look round or square, the other features of oceans and mountains are infinite in variety. Whole worlds are there. It is so not only around you, but also directly beneath your feet, or in a drop of water. A fish swims in the ocean, and no matter how far it swims, there is no end to the water. A bird flies in the sky, and no matter how far it flies, there is no end to the sky. However, the fish and the bird have never left their elements. When their activity is large, their field is large. When their need is small, their field is small. Thus, each of them totally covers its full range, and each of them totally experiences its realm. If the bird leaves the air, it will die at once. If the fish leaves the water, it will die at once. Know that water is life, and air is life. The bird is life, and the fish is life. Life must be the bird, and life must be the fish. It is possible to illustrate this with more analogies. Practice, enlightenment, and human people are like this. Now, if a bird or a fish tries to reach the end of its element before moving in it, this bird or this fish will not find its place or its way. When you find your place where you are, practice occurs, actualizing the fundamental point. When you find your way at this moment, practice occurs, actualizing the fundamental point. For the place, the way, is neither large nor small, neither yours nor others. The place, the way, has not carried over from the past, and it is not merely arising now. Accordingly, in the practice enlightenment of the Buddha way, meeting one thing is mastering it. Doing one practice is practicing completely. Here is the place. Here the way unfolds. The boundary of realization is not distinct, for the realization comes forth simultaneously with the mastery of Buddha teachings. Do not suppose that what you realize becomes your knowledge and is grasped by your consciousness. Although actualized immediately, the inconceivable may not be apparent. Its appearance is beyond your knowledge. Zen Master Baoche of Mount Mayu was fanning himself. A monk approached and said, "Master, the nature of wind is permanent, and there is no place it does not reach. Why then do you fan yourself?" "Although you understand that the nature of the wind is permanent," Baoche replied, "you do not understand the meaning of its reaching everywhere." "What is the meaning of its reaching everywhere?" asked the monk again. The master just kept fanning himself. The monk bowed deeply. The actualization of the Buddha Dharma, the vital path of its correct transmission, is like this. If you say that you do not need to fan yourself because the nature of wind is permanent, and you can have wind without fanning, you will understand neither permanence nor the nature of wind. The nature of wind is permanent. Because of that, the wind of the Buddha's house brings forth the gold of the earth and makes fragrant the ghee of the long river. The time being. Uji. An old-time Buddha said, "For the time being, stand on top of the highest peak. For the time being, proceed along the bottom of the deepest ocean. For the time being, 3 heads and 8 arms. For the time being, an 8 or a 16-foot body. For the time being, a staff or a whisk. For the time being, a pillar or lantern. For the time being, the earth and sky." For the time being here means time itself is being, and all being is time. A golden 16-foot body is time. Because it is time, there is the radiant illumination of time. Study it as the 12 hours of the present. 3 heads and 8 arms is time. Because it is time, it is not separate from the 12 hours of the present moment. Even though you do not measure the hours of the day as long or short, far or near, we still call it the 12 hours. Because the signs of time's coming and going are obvious, people do not doubt it. Although they do not doubt it, they do not understand it. Or when living beings doubt what they do not understand, their doubt is not firmly fixed. Because of that, their past doubts do not necessarily coincide with their present doubts. Yet doubt itself is nothing but time. The way the self arrays itself is the form of the entire world. See each thing in this entire world as a moment of time. Things do not hinder one another, just as moments do not hinder one another. The way-seeking mind arises in this moment. A way-seeking moment arises in this mind. It is the same with practice and with attaining the way. Thus, the self setting itself out in array sees itself. This is the understanding that the self is time. Know that in this way there are myriads of forms and hundreds of grasses throughout the entire earth, and yet each grass and each form itself is the entire earth. The study of this is the beginning of practice. When you are at this place, there is just one grass, there is just one form, there is understanding of form and no understanding of form, there is understanding of grass and no understanding of grass. Since there is nothing but just this moment, the time being is all there is. Grass being, form being, are both time. Each moment is all being, is the entire world. Reflect now whether any being or any world is left out of the present moment. Yet, an ordinary person who does not understand Buddha Dharma may hear the words, the time being, this way, thinking, "For a while I was 3 heads and 8 arms. For a while I was an 8 or 16-foot body. This is like having crossed over rivers and climbed mountains. Even though the mountains and rivers still exist, I have already passed them, and now I reside in the jeweled palace and in the vermilion tower. Those mountains and rivers are now as distant from me as heaven is from earth." It's not that simple. At the time the mountains were climbed and the rivers crossed, you were present. Time is not separate from you, and as you are present, time does not go away. As time is not marked by coming and going, the moment you climbed the mountains is the time being right now. If time keeps coming and going, you are the time being right now. This is the meaning of the time being. Does this time being not swallow up the moment when you climbed the mountains, and the moment when you resided in the jeweled palace and vermilion tower? Does it not spit them out? Having 3 heads and 8 arms may be yesterday's time. The 8 or 16-foot body may be today's time. Yet yesterday and today are both in the moment when you directly enter the mountains and see thousands and myriads of peaks. Yesterday's time and today's time do not go away. 3 heads and 8 arms move forward as your time being. It looks as if they are far away, but they are here and now. The 8 or 16-foot body moves forward as your time being. It looks as if it is nearby, but it is exactly here. Thus, a pine tree is time. A bamboo is time. Do not think that time merely flies away. Do not see flying away as the only function of time. If time merely flies away, you would be separated from time. The reason you do not clearly understand the time being is that you think of time only as passing. In essence, all things in the entire world are linked with one another as moments. Because all moments are the time being, they are your time being. The time being has the quality of flowing. So-called today flows into tomorrow. Today flows into yesterday. Yesterday flows into today. And today flows into today. Tomorrow flows into tomorrow. Because flowing is a quality of time, moments of past and present do not overlap or line up side by side. Qing Yuan is time, Wang Bo is time, Jiang Shi is time, Shi To is time, all these great old masters. Because self and other are already time. Practice enlightenment is time. Being splattered with mud and getting wet with water is also time. Although the views of an ordinary person and the causes and conditions of those views are what the ordinary person sees, they are not necessarily that ordinary person's truth. The truth merely manifests itself for the time being as an ordinary person. Because you think your time or your being is not truth, you believe that the 16-foot golden body is not you. However, your attempts to escape from being the 16-foot golden body of the Buddha are nothing but bits and pieces of the time being. Those who have not yet confirmed this should look into it deeply. The hours of the horse and sheep, which are arrayed in the world now, are actualized by ascendings and descendings of the time being at each moment. The hour of the rat is time, the hour of the tiger is time, living beings are time, and Buddhas are time. At this time you enlighten the entire world with your 3 heads and your 8 arms. You enlighten the entire world with the 16-foot golden Buddha body. To fully actualize the entire world with the entire world is called thorough practice. To fully actualize the golden Buddha body, to arouse the way-seeking mind, practice, attain enlightenment, and enter nirvana is nothing but being, is nothing but time. Just actualize all time as all being. There's nothing extra. A so-called extra being is thoroughly an extra being. Thus, the time being half-actualized is half of the time being completely actualized, and a moment that seems to be missed is also completely being. In the same way, even the moment before or after, the moment that appears to be missed, is also complete in itself, the time being. Vigorously abiding in each moment is the time being. Do not mistakenly confuse it as non-being, and do not forcefully assert it as being. You may suppose that time is only passing away, and not understand that time never arrives. Although understanding itself is time, understanding does not depend on its own arrival. People only see times coming and going, and do not thoroughly understand that the time being abides in each moment. This being so, when can they penetrate the barrier? Even if people recognized the time being in each moment, who could give expression to this recognition? Even if they could give expression to this recognition for a long time, who could stop looking for the realization of the original face? According to ordinary people's view of the time being, even enlightenment and nirvana as the time being would be merely aspects of coming and going. The time being is entirely actualized without being caught up in nets or cages. Heavenly Deva kings and heavenly beings appearing right and left are the time being of your complete effort right now. The time being of all beings throughout the world in water and on land is just the actualization of your complete effort right now. All beings of all kinds in the visible and invisible realms are the time being actualized by your complete effort, flowing due to your effort. Closely examine this flowing. Without your effort right now, nothing would be actualized, nothing would flow. Do not think flowing is like wind and rain moving from east to west. The entire world is not unchangeable, is not immovable. It all flows. Flowing is like spring. Spring, with all its numerous aspects, is called flowing. When spring flows, there is nothing outside of spring. Study this in detail. Spring invariably flows through spring. Although flowing itself is not spring, flowing occurs throughout spring. Thus, flowing is completed at just this moment of spring. Examine this thoroughly, coming and going. And in your study of flowing, if you imagine the objective to be outside yourself, and that you flow and move through hundreds and thousands of worlds for hundreds, thousands, and myriads of eons, you have not devotedly studied the Buddha way. Great Master Hongdao of Mount Yao, instructed by Shurto, once went to study with the Zen master Daji. Yao Shan asked, "I am familiar with the teaching of the 3 vehicles and the 12 divisions, but what is the meaning of Bodhidharma coming from the West?" Daji replied, "For the time being, have him raise his eyebrows and wink. For the time being, do not have him raise his eyebrows and wink. For the time being, to have him raise his eyebrows and wink is right. For the time being, to have him raise his eyebrows and wink is not right." Hearing these words, Yao Shan experienced great enlightenment, and said later to Daji, "When I was studying with Shurto, it was like a mosquito trying to bite an iron bull." What Daji said is not the same as other people's words. His eyebrows and eyes are mountains and oceans. Mountains and oceans are eyebrows and eyes. To have him raise the eyebrows is to see the mountains. To have him wink is to understand the oceans. The right answer belongs to him, and he is activated by your having him raise the eyebrows and wink. Not right does not mean not having him raise the eyebrows and wink. Not to have him raise the eyebrows and wink does not mean not right. These are all equally the time being. Mountains are time. Oceans are time. If they weren't time, there would be no mountains or oceans. Do not think that mountains and oceans here and now are not time. If time is annihilated, mountains and oceans go too. As time is not annihilated, mountains and oceans are not annihilated. This being so, the morning star of enlightenment appears. The Tathagata appears. The I appears, and the raising of a flower appears. Each is time. If it were not time, it could not be thus. The Zen master Gui Xing, a Dharma heir of Linji, one day taught the group, "For the time being, mind arrives, but words don't. For the time being, words arrive, but mind doesn't. For the time being, both mind and words arrive. For the time being, neither mind nor words arrive." Both mind and words are the time being. Arriving and not arriving are both time being. When the moment of arriving has not appeared, the moment of not arriving is here. Mind is a donkey. Words are a horse. Having already arrived is just words. Not having left is mind. Arriving is not coming. Not arriving is not yet. The time being is like this. Arriving is overwhelmed by arriving, but not by not arriving. Not arriving is overwhelmed by not arriving, but not by arriving. Mind overwhelms mind and sees mind. Words overwhelm words and see words. Overwhelming overwhelms overwhelming and sees overwhelming. Overwhelming is nothing but overwhelming. This is time. As overwhelming is caused by you, there is no overwhelming that is separate from you. Thus you go out and meet someone. Someone meets someone. You meet yourself. Going out meets going out. If these are not the actualization of time, they cannot be thus. Mind is the moment of actualizing the fundamental point. Words are the moment of going beyond, unlocking the barrier. Arriving is the moment of casting off the body. Not arriving is the moment of being one with just this, while being free from just this. In this way, you must endeavor to actualize the time being. The old masters have thus uttered these words. But is there nothing further to say? Mind and words arriving part way are the time being. Mind and words not arriving part way are the time being. In this manner you can also examine the time being. To have him raise the eyebrows and wink is half the time being. To have him raise the eyebrows and wink is the time being missed. Not to have him raise the eyebrows and wink is half the time being. Not to have him raise the eyebrows and wink is the time being missed. Thus, to study thoroughly, coming and going, and to study thoroughly, arriving and not arriving, is the time being of this moment. Undivided activity, Zenki. The great way of all Buddhas, thoroughly practiced, is emancipation and realization. Emancipation means that in birth you are emancipated from birth. In death you are emancipated from death. Thus there is detachment from birth and death, and penetrating birth and death. Such is the complete practice of the Great Way. There is letting go of birth and death, and vitalizing birth and death. Such is the thorough practice of the Great Way. Realization is birth, birth is realization. At the time of realization, there is nothing but birth, totally actualized, nothing but death, totally actualized. Such activity makes birth wholly birth, death wholly death. Actualized just so at this moment, this activity is neither large nor small, neither immeasurable nor measurable, neither remote nor urgent. Birth in its right nowness is undivided activity. Undivided activity is birth in its immediacy. Life, birth, neither comes nor goes. Life neither appears nor is already existing. Thus, life is totally manifested, death is totally manifested. Know that there are innumerable beings in yourself. Also there is birth and there is death. Quietly think over whether life and all things that arise together with life are inseparable or not. There is neither a moment nor a thing that is apart from birth. There is neither an object nor a mind that is apart from birth. Being born into life is just like riding in a boat. You raise the sails and row with the oar. Although you row, the boat gives you a ride, and without the boat no one could ride. But you ride in the boat, and your riding makes the boat what it is. Think of this. At just such a moment, there is nothing but the world of the boat. The sky, the water, and the shore are all the boat's world, which is not the same as a world that is not the boat's. When you ride in a boat, your body and mind and the environs together are the undivided activity of the boat. The entire earth and sky are the activity of the boat. Thus, life is nothing but you. You are nothing but life. The Zen master Yuan Wu said, "Life is undivided activity. Death is undivided activity." Clarify these words. What you should investigate is, while the undivided activity of life has no beginning or end, and covers the entire earth and sky, it hinders neither birth's undivided activity nor death's undivided activity. At the moment of death's activity, while it covers the sky and the earth, it hinders neither death's undivided activity nor birth's undivided activity. This being so, birth doesn't hinder death, death doesn't hinder birth. Both the entire earth and the entire sky appear in life as well as in death. However, it is not that one and the same entire earth and sky are fully manifested in birth and also fully manifested in death, although not one, not different, although not different, not the same, although not the same, not many. Similarly, in birth there is undivided activity of all things, and in death there is undivided activity of all things. And there is undivided activity in what is not birth and not death. And there is birth and death in undivided activity. This being so, the undivided activity of birth and death is like a young man bending and stretching his arm, or it is like someone asleep searching with his hand behind his back for the pillow. This is realization in a vast and wondrous light. About just such a moment, you may suppose that because realization is manifested in activity, there was no realization prior to this. However, prior to this realization, undivided activity was manifested. But undivided activity manifested previously doesn't hinder the present realization of it. Because of this, your understanding can be manifested moment after moment. Body and Mind Study of the Way. Shinjin Gakudo. The Buddha way cannot be attained unless you practice, and without study it remains remote. The Zen master Dawei of Nanyue said, "It is not that there is no practice and no realization, it is just that they cannot be conceptualized. Not to study the Buddha way is to fall into the realm of shameless and erroneous ways. All preceding and succeeding Buddhas always practice the Buddha way." For the time being, let us say there are two approaches to studying the Buddha way: to study with mind and to study with body. To study with mind means to study with the various aspects of mind, such as consciousness, emotion, and intellect. After resonating with the way and arousing the thought of enlightenment, take refuge in the great way of the Buddha ancestors and devote yourself to the practice of the way-seeking mind. Even if you have not yet aroused way-seeking mind, follow the examples of the previous Buddhas who did arouse way-seeking mind in former times. There is the thought of enlightenment, bits and pieces of straightforward mind, the mind of the ancient Buddhas, everyday mind, and the triple world which is one mind. Sometimes you study the way by casting off the mind. Sometimes you study the way by taking up the mind. Either way, study the way with thinking, and study the way not thinking. To correctly transmit and inherit the brocade robe, to say, "You have attained my marrow," to make 3 bows and return to the original place, and to pound rice and receive the robe, these Buddha practice traditions are all what we call studying mind with mind. Shaving the head and wearing the robe is itself turning the mind and illuminating the mind. Leaving the castle and entering the mountains is leaving one mind and entering one mind. To directly enter the mountains is to think not thinking. To leave the world behind is non-thinking. Those who have rolled up this matter into wide-open eyeballs are 2 or 3 bushels of people. Those who have tampered with it by karma consciousness are thousands and millions of pieces. When you study the way in this manner, having merit, the result comes of itself. Having the result, merit does not arrive. You will secretly borrow the nostrils of the Buddha ancestors and have them exhale, and taking up the hoof of a donkey, you will have it imprint the seal of enlightenment. These are authentic examples of the ancient tradition. Now, mountains, rivers, earth, the sun, the moon, and the stars are mind. At just this moment, what is it that appears directly in front of you? When we say mountains, rivers, and earth, we do not merely mean the mountains, rivers, and earth where you are standing. There are various kinds of mountains, such as Great Mount Sumeru at the very center of the universe, and small Mount Sumeru. Some mountains extend widely, some rise up steeply. 1 billion worlds and innumerable lands can be found in a mountain. There are mountains suspended in form. There are mountains suspended in emptiness. There are also many kinds of waters, heavenly rivers, earthly rivers, the 4 great rivers. There are lakes without heat. In the great northern continent, the heatless lake, Anavatapta, is the source of the 4 great rivers. There are oceans. There are pools. Earth is not necessarily ground, and ground is not necessarily earth. There is earth ground, there is mind ground, there is treasure ground. Although the varieties are innumerable, it is not that there is no earth, but invariably there is a world where emptiness is earth. The sun, moon, and stars, as seen by humans and by devas, are not the same, and the views of various beings differ widely. Views about one mind differ as well. Yet these views themselves are nothing but mind. Is it inside or outside? Does it come or go? Is there more of it at birth or not? Is there less of it at death or not? How do we understand this birth and this death, and our views of birth and death? All this is merely a moment or two of mind. A moment or two of mind is a moment of mountains, rivers, and earth, or 2 moments of mountains, rivers, and earth. Because mountains, rivers, and earth, and so forth neither exist nor do not exist, they are not large or small, not attainable or unattainable, not knowable or unknowable. They neither change with realization nor change without realization. Just wholeheartedly accept and trust that to study the way with mind is this mountains, rivers, and earth, mind itself, thoroughly engaged in studying the way. This trust and acceptance is neither large nor small. To study in this manner, understanding that home is no home, abandoning home, entering a homeless life, this is not measurable as large or small. It is beyond beginning or end, beyond ascending or descending. Broaching the subject, it is 7 or 8 feet. Responding immediately, it benefits the self and others. All this is nothing but the study of the way. Because the study of the way is like this, walls, tiles, pebbles are mind. Other than this, there is no triple world mind only, and no phenomenal universe mind only. Mind is walls, tiles, pebbles, put together before the Xiantong era and taken apart after the Xiantong era, splattered with mud and soaking wet. Binding the self with no rope, mind has the power to attract a pearl and the ability to be a pearl in the water. Some days the pearl is melted, sometimes it's crushed. There are times when this pearl is reduced to extremely fine powder. Mind does not converse with bare pillars or rub shoulders with hanging lanterns. In this manner, the mind studies the way running barefoot. Who can get a glimpse of it? The mind studies the way turning somersaults, and all things tumble over with it. At this time, a wall crumbling away allows you to study the 10 directions, and the gateless gate allows you to study the 4 quarters. The thought of enlightenment can occur within birth and death or within nirvana. It can also occur without concern for samsara and nirvana. It does not depend upon the place where it occurs, nor is it hindered by the place. Conditions do not arouse it. Knowledge does not arouse it. The thought of enlightenment arouses itself. This arousing is the thought of enlightenment. The thought of enlightenment neither exists nor not exists, neither good nor bad nor neutral. It is not the result of past suffering. Even beings in blissful realms can arouse it. The thought of enlightenment arises just at the time of arising. It's not limited by conditions. Just now, the thought of enlightenment is aroused. The entire universe arouses the thought of enlightenment. Although the thought of enlightenment seems to create conditions, it actually does not encounter conditions. The thought of enlightenment and conditions together hold out a single hand held out freely, a single hand held out in the midst of all being. Thus, the thought of enlightenment is aroused even in the realm of hell, of hungry ghosts, of animals, of malevolent spirits. The term bits and pieces of straightforward mind means all the bits and pieces, moment after moment, are straightforward mind. Not only one or two pieces, but all bits and pieces. The lotus leaf is perfectly round, round as a mirror. The tip of a water chestnut is extremely sharp, sharp as a gimlet. Although straightforward mind resembles a mirror, it is bits and pieces. Though it resembles a gimlet, it is bits and pieces. As for the mind of the ancient Buddhas, a monk once asked the master Dogen, "What is the mind of the ancient Buddhas?" Dogen replied, "Walls, tiles, pebbles." This being so, you should know that the mind of the ancient Buddhas is not walls, tiles, and pebbles, and that walls, tiles, and pebbles are not called the mind of the ancient Buddhas. The mind of the ancient Buddhas is studied in this way. Everyday mind means to maintain an everyday mind in this world or in any world. Yesterday goes forth from this moment, and today comes forth from this place. With going, the boundless sky goes. With coming, the entire earth comes. This is everyday mind. Everyday mind opens the gate of the inner chamber. Because thousands of gates and 10,000s of doors open and close all at once, it is everyday mind. Now, this boundless sky and entire earth are like unrecognized words, a voice from the deep. Words are all-inclusive. Mind is all-inclusive. Things are all-inclusive. Although there is birth and death in each moment of this life of birth and death, the body after the final body is never known. Even though you do not know it, if you arouse the thought of enlightenment, you'll move forward on the way of enlightenment. The moment is already here. Don't doubt it in the least. Even if you should doubt it, this is nothing but everyday mind. To study the way with the body. This means to study the way with your own body. It is the study of the way using this lump of red meat. The body comes forth from the study of the way. Everything which comes forth from the study of the way is the true human body. The entire world of the 10 directions is nothing but the true human body. The coming and going of birth and death is the true human body. To turn this body around, abandoning the 10 unwholesome actions, keeping the 8 precepts, taking refuge in the 3 treasures, and leaving home and entering a homeless life, is the true study of the way. For this reason, it is called the true human body. Those who follow this must not be like those who hold the view of natural enlightenment. Zen Master Daji said, "If you attach to the view that original purity and original emancipation are Buddha, or Zen practice, you are a follower of the outsider's way of natural enlightenment. This teaching is not the broken furniture of an abandoned house, but the collected efforts and accumulated virtue of studying the way." The body suddenly leaps up, transparently clear in 8 directions. It drops away, entwined around a tree like wisteria. Daji's words are nothing but manifesting this body, awakening beings, and expounding the Dharma, manifesting another's body, awakening beings, and expounding the Dharma, not manifesting this body, awakening beings, and expounding the Dharma, not manifesting another's body, awakening beings, and expounding the Dharma. Then again, his words are not expounding the Dharma. Thus, at the moment of dropping away of the body, there is a voice that stops all sound. At the moment of renouncing worldly life, the arm is cut off and the marrow is attained. Even if you begin to study the way before the eon of the King of Emptiness, still your practice, as a descendant of yourself, is endless. The entire world of the 10 directions. This means the 10 directions are the entire world. They are east, west, south, north, the 4 midpoints, up and down. That makes the 10 directions. Consider the moment when front and back, vertical and horizontal, are thoroughly mastered. To consider means to understand and to resolve that this human body, undivided by self and others, is the world of the 10 directions. This is to hear what has never been heard, because directions are all-inclusive and all worlds are alike. The human body means the 4 great elements and the 5 skandhas, or constituents of character. However, none of these elements and skandhas is fully understood by ordinary people. Only sages thoroughly master them. Now, penetrate the 10 directions within 1 particle of dust, but do not confine them to a particle of dust. Construct a monk's hall and a Buddha hall within a single particle of dust, and construct the entire world inside the monk's hall and the Buddha hall. In this way, the human body is constructed, and such construction comes from the human body. This is the meaning of the entire world of the 10 directions is the true human body. Because it is not in the realm of the measurable, the true body is not broad or narrow. The entire world of the 10 directions is 84,000 Dharma-expounding constituents, 84,000 samadhis, and 84,000 powerful incantations. Because the 84,000 Dharma-expounding constituents are turning the Dharma wheel, the moment the wheel is turned, the true body covers the whole universe and extends through all time. It is not that the true body is unlimited. The true body is just the true body. At this moment it is you, at this moment it's I, who is the true body, the entire world of the 10 directions. Without missing these points, we must study the way. Even if you were to renounce the body, or accept the body for 3 great eons, for 13 great eons, or for innumerable eons, invariably this is the moment to study the way backwards and forwards. To bow to the floor and to make standing bows is dignified bearing in motion and stillness. Painting a decayed tree and polishing a brick of dead ash continues without stopping. Even though calendar days are short and urgent, study of the way in this manner is profound and deep. Although the life of those who have abandoned home and entered the homeless realm for their practice of the way may appear bleak and lonely, it should not be confused with that of woodcutters. Even if they are continually active, Their life is not the same as that of farmers. Do not get caught up in discussions of delusion or enlightenment, good or bad. Do not stay in the realm of wrong or right, true or false. The phrase, coming and going of birth and death is the true body, means that, even though birth and death is where ordinary people drift about, it is also where great sages are liberated. Merely going beyond the ordinary and surpassing the sage is not the true body. Although there are 2 or 7 kinds of birth and death, when they are thoroughly mastered, they are not to be feared, as each one of them is nothing but samsara. How is this so? Not abandoning birth, you see death. Not abandoning death, you see birth. Birth doesn't hinder death. Death doesn't hinder birth. Neither birth nor death is really known by ordinary people. Birth is like a cypress tree. Death is like an iron man. Even if a cypress tree were to hinder a cypress tree, birth is never hindered by death. Birth and death are the study of the way. Birth is not like one sheet of cloth. Death is not like 2 rolls of cloth. Death is not the opposite of birth. Birth is not the opposite of death. Zen Master Yuan Wu said, birth is undivided activity. Death is undivided activity. Filling up the great empty sky, straightforward mind is always bits and pieces. You should pursue and examine these words. Although Zen Master Yuan Wu once said this, he did not understand that birth and death further overflows undivided activity. When you study coming and going, in coming there is samsara, in going there is samsara. In birth there is coming and going, in death there is coming and going. Coming and going is to fly in and fly out with the entire world of the 10 directions as 2 or 3 wings, and to walk forward and backward with the entire world of the 10 directions as 3 or 5 feet. With birth and death as its head and tail, the entire world of the 10 directions, the true body, freely turns the body and flaps the brain. When turning the body and flapping the brain, it is the size of a penny. It is inside a particle of dust. It is the vast flat earth. It is a sheer 8,000-foot cliff. Where there is a sheer 8,000-foot cliff, there is the vast flat earth. In this way, the true body is manifested as the southern and northern continents. To look at this is to study the way. The true body is the bones and marrow of the realm beyond consciousness and unconsciousness. Just raising this much up is the study of the way. The Mountains and Waters Sutra, Sansui Kyo. Mountains and waters right now are the actualization of the ancient Buddha way. Each, abiding in its phenomenal expression, realizes completeness. Because mountains and waters have been active since before the empty eon, they are alive at this moment. Because they have been the self since before form arose, they are emancipation realization. Because mountains are high and broad, the way of riding the clouds is always reached in the mountains. The inconceivable power of soaring in the wind comes freely from the mountains. The priest Dao Kai of Mount Furong said to the assembly, "The green mountains are always walking. A stone woman gives birth to a child at night." Mountains do not lack the quality of mountains. Therefore, they always abide in ease and always walk. You should examine in detail this quality of mountains walking. Mountains walking is just like human walking. Accordingly, don't doubt mountains walking, even though it doesn't look the same as human walking. The Buddha ancestors' words point to walking. This is fundamental understanding. Penetrate these words. Because green mountains walk, they are permanent. Though they walk more swiftly than the wind, someone in the mountains does not realize or understand it. In the mountains means the blossoming of the entire world. People outside the mountains do not realize or understand the mountains walking. Those without eyes to see mountains cannot realize, understand, see, or hear this as it is. If you doubt mountains walking, you don't know your own walking. It's not that you don't walk, but that you don't know or understand your own walking. Since you do know your own walking, you should fully know the blue mountains walking. Blue mountains are neither sentient nor insentient. You are neither sentient nor insentient. At this moment, you cannot doubt the blue mountains walking. You should study the green mountains, the blue mountains, using numerous worlds as your standards. You should clearly examine the blue mountains walking and your own walking. You should also examine walking backward and backward walking, and investigate the fact that walking forward and backward has never stopped since the very moment before form arose, since the time of the king of the empty eon. If walking stops, the Buddha ancestors do not appear. If walking ends, the Buddha teachings cannot reach the present. Walking forward does not cease. Walking backward does not cease. Walking forward does not obstruct walking backward. This is called the mountains flow and the flowing mountains. Green mountains master walking, and eastern mountains master traveling on the water. Accordingly, these activities are a mountain's practice. Keeping its own form, without changing body and mind, a mountain always practices in every place. Don't slander by saying that a green mountain cannot walk, and an eastern mountain cannot travel on water. When your understanding is shallow, you doubt the phrase, blue mountains are walking. When your learning is immature, you are shocked by the words, flowing mountains. Without fully understanding even the words, flowing water, you drown in small views and narrow understandings. Yet the characteristics of mountains manifest their form and life force. There is walking, there is flowing, and there is a moment when a mountain gives birth to a mountain child. Because mountains are Buddha ancestors appear this way. Even if you see mountains as grass, trees, earth, rocks, or walls, don't take this seriously or worry about it. It is not complete realization. Even if there is a moment when you see mountains as the seven treasures shining, this is not returning to the source. Even if you understand mountains as the realm where all Buddhas practice, this understanding is not something to be attached to. Even if you have the highest understanding of mountains as all Buddha's inconceivable qualities, the truth is not only this. These are all just conditioned views. This is not the understanding of Buddha ancestors, but it is just looking through a bamboo tube at some corner of the sky. Turning an object and turning the mind is rejected by the great sage. Explaining the mind and explaining true nature is not agreeable to the Buddha ancestors. Seeing into mind and seeing into true nature is the activity of people outside the way. Set words and phrases are not the words of liberation. There is something free from all of these understandings. Blue mountains are always walking. Eastern mountains travel on water. You should study this in detail. The phrase, "a stone woman gives birth to a child at night," means that the moment when a barren woman gives birth to a child is called night. There are male stones, female stones, and non-male, non-female stones. They are placed in the sky and in the earth, and are called heavenly stones and earthly stones. These are explained in the ordinary world, but not many people really know about it. You should understand the meaning of giving birth to a child. At the moment of giving birth to a child, is the mother separate from the child? You should study not only that you become a mother when your child is born, but also that you become a child. This is the actualization of giving birth in practice realization. Investigate this. And the great master Yunmen said, "Eastern mountains travel on water." The reason these words were brought forth is that all mountains are eastern mountains, and all eastern mountains travel on water. Because of this, the 9 mountains, Mount Sumeru, and other mountains appear and have practice realization. These are called eastern mountains. But could Yunmen penetrate the skin, flesh, bones, and marrow of the eastern mountains and their vital practice realization? You should know that eastern mountains traveling on water is the bones and marrow of the Buddha ancestors. All waters appear at the foot of the eastern mountains. Accordingly, all mountains ride on clouds and walk in the sky. Above all waters are all mountains. Walking beyond and walking within are both done on water. All mountains walk with their toes on all waters and splash there. Thus, in walking, there are 7 paths vertical and 8 paths horizontal. This is practice realization. Water is neither strong nor weak, neither wet nor dry, neither moving nor still, neither cold nor hot, neither existent nor non-existent, neither diluted nor enlightened. When water solidifies, freezes, it is harder than a diamond. Who can crack it? When water melts, it is gentler than milk. Who could destroy it? Do not doubt that these are the characteristics water manifests. You should reflect on the moment when you see the water of the 10 directions as the water of the 10 directions. This is not just studying the moment when human and heavenly beings see water. This is studying the moment when water sees water. Because water has realization of water, water speaks of water. This is complete understanding. You should go forward and backward and leap beyond the vital path where other fathoms other. All beings do not see mountains and waters in the same way. Some beings see water as a jeweled ornament, but they do not regard jeweled ornaments as water. What in the human realm corresponds to their water? We only see their jeweled ornaments as water. Some beings see water as wondrous blossoms, but they do not use blossoms as water. Hungry ghosts see water as raging fire or pus and blood. Dragons see water as a palace or a pavilion. Some beings see water as the 7 treasures or a wish-granting jewel. Some beings see water as a forest or a wall. Some see it as the Dharma nature of pure liberation, the true human body, or as the form of body and essence of mind. Human beings see water as water. Water is seen as dead or alive, depending on causes and conditions. Thus, the views of all beings are not the same. Question this matter now. Are there many ways to see one thing? Or is it a mistake to see many forms as one thing? Pursue this beyond the limit of pursuit. Accordingly, endeavors in practice realization of the way are not limited to one or two kinds. The ultimate realm has 1,000 kinds and 10,000 ways. When we think about the meaning of this, it seems that there is water for various beings, but there is no original water. There is no water common to all types of beings. But water for these various kinds of beings does not depend on mind or body, does not arise from actions, does not depend on self or other. Water's freedom depends only on water. Therefore, water is not just earth, water, fire, wind, space, or consciousness, the 6 elements. Water is not blue, yellow, red, white, or black. Water is not forms, sounds, smells, tastes, touchables, or mind objects, but water as earth, as water, as fire, wind, and space realizes itself. For this reason, it is difficult to say who is creating this land and palace right now, or how such things are being created. To say that the world is resting on the wheel of space, or on the wheel of wind, is not the truth of the self or the truth of others. Such a statement is based only on a small view. People speak this way because they think it must be impossible to exist without having a place on which to rest. The Buddha said, "All things are ultimately liberated, and there is nowhere they abide." You should know that even though all things are liberated and not tied to anything, they do abide in their own phenomenal expression. However, when most human beings see water, they only see that it flows unceasingly. That is a limited human view. There are actually many kinds of flowing. Water flows on the earth, in the sky, upward and downward. It can flow around a single curve or into many bottomless abysses. When it rises, it becomes clouds. When it descends, it forms abysses. The Chinese geographer Wan Zi wrote, "The path of water is such that when it rises to the sky, it becomes raindrops. When it falls to the ground, it becomes rivers." Even a scholar could speak that way. You who call yourselves descendants of Buddha ancestors should feel ashamed of being more ignorant than an ordinary person. The path of water is not noticed by water, but is realized by water. It is not unnoticed by water, but it is realized by water. When it rises to the sky, it becomes raindrops, means that water rises to the heavens and skies everywhere and forms raindrops. But raindrops vary according to the different worlds. To say that there are places water does not reach is the teaching of the listeners of the small vehicle, or the mistaken teaching of people outside the way. Water exists inside fire, and inside mind, thought, and ideas. Water also exists within the wisdom of realizing Buddha nature. The phrase, "when it falls to the ground it becomes rivers," means that when water reaches the ground it turns into rivers. The essence of the rivers becomes wise people. Now, ordinary fools and mediocre people think that water is always in rivers or oceans, but this is not so. Rivers and oceans exist in water. Accordingly, even where there is not a river or an ocean, there is water. It is just that when water falls down to the ground, it manifests the characteristics of rivers and oceans. Also, don't think that where water forms rivers or oceans, there is no world and there is no Buddha land. Even in one drop of water, innumerable Buddha lands appear. Therefore, it is not a question of whether there is only water in the Buddha land or a Buddha land in water. The existence of water is not concerned with past, future, present, or the phenomenal world. Yet water is actualization of the fundamental point. Where the Buddha ancestors reach, water never fails to appear. Because of this, the Buddha ancestors always take up water and make it their body and mind, and make it their thought. In this way, the words, "water does not rise," are not found in scriptures inside or outside of Buddhism. The path of water runs upward and downward and in all directions. However, there is one Buddhist sutra that does say, "Fire and air go up, earth and water go down." This up and down require examination. You should examine them from the Buddhist point of view. Although you use the word downward to describe the direction earth and water go, earth and water do not actually go down. In the same way, the direction fire and air go is called up. The phenomenal world does not actually exist in terms of up or down or the other directions. It is tentatively designated according to the directions in which the 4 great elements, the 5 great elements, or the 6 great elements go. But the heaven of no thought should not be regarded as upward, nor the Avicii hell as downward. The Avicii hell is the entire phenomenal world. The heaven of no thought is the entire phenomenal world. Now, when dragons and fish see water as a palace, it is just like human beings seeing a palace. They don't think it flows. If an outsider tells them, "What you think is a palace is just running water," the dragons and fish will be astonished, just as we are when we hear the words, "mountains flow." Nevertheless, there may be some dragons and fish who understand that the columns and pillars of palaces and pavilions are also flowing water. Reflect and consider the meaning of this. If you don't learn to be free from superficial views, you won't be free from the body and mind of an ordinary person. Then you will not understand the land of the Buddha ancestors, or even the land or the palace of ordinary people. Now, human beings well know, as water, what is in the ocean and what is in the river, but they don't know what dragons and fish see as water and use as water. Do not foolishly suppose that what we see as water is used as water by all other beings. You who study with Buddha teachers should not be limited to human views when you are studying water. You should study how you view the water used by ancestors. You should study whether there is water or no water in the house of the Buddhas. Mountains have been the abode of great sages from the limitless past to the limitless present. Wise people and sages all have mountains as their inner chamber, as their body and mind. Because of wise people and sages, mountains appear. You might think that in mountains many wise people and great sages are assembled. But after entering the mountains, not a single person meets another. There is just the activity of the mountains. There is no trace of anyone having entered the mountains. When you see mountains from the ordinary world, and when you meet mountains while in mountains, the mountain's head and eye are viewed quite differently. Your idea or view of mountains not flowing is not the same as the view of dragons and fish. Human and heavenly beings have attained a position concerning their own worlds, which other beings either doubt or do not doubt. You should not just remain bewildered and skeptical when you hear the words, "mountains flow," but, together with Buddha ancestors, you should study these words. When you take one view, you see mountains flowing, and when you take another view, mountains are not flowing. One time mountains are flowing, another time they are not flowing. If you do not fully understand this, you do not understand the true Dharma wheel of the Tathagata. An ancient Buddha said, "If you do not wish to incur the cause for unceasing hell, do not slander the true Dharma wheel of the Tathagata. You should carve these words on your skin, flesh, bones, and marrow, on your body, mind, and environment, on emptiness and on form. They are already carved on trees and rocks, on fields and villages." Although mountains belong to the nation, mountains really belong to people who love them. When mountains love their master, such a virtuous sage or wise person enters the mountains. Since mountains belong to the sages and wise people living there, trees and rocks become abundant, and birds and animals are inspired. This is so because the sages and wise people extend their virtue. You should know it is a fact that mountains are fond of wise people and sages. Many rulers have visited mountains to pay homage to wise people or to ask for instruction from great sages. These have been important events in the past and present. At such times, these rulers treat the sages as teachers, disregarding the protocol of the usual world. The imperial power has no authority over the wise people in the mountains. Mountains are apart from the human world. At the time the Yellow Emperor visited Mount Kungdong to pay homage to Guangcheng, he walked on his knees, touched his forehead to the ground, and asked for instruction. When Shakyamuni the Buddha left his father's palace and entered the mountains, his father, the king, did not resent the mountains, nor was he suspicious of those who taught the prince in the mountains. The 12 years of Shakyamuni Buddha's practice of the way were mostly spent in the mountains, and his attainment of the way occurred in the mountains. Thus even his father, a great king, did not wield authority in the mountains. You should know that mountains are not the realm of human beings, nor the realm of heavenly beings. Don't view mountains from the scale of human thought. If you don't judge mountains flowing by the human understanding of flowing, you won't doubt mountains flowing and not flowing. On the other hand, from ancient times, wise people and sages have often lived near water. When they live near water, they catch fish, catch human beings, catch the way. For long, these have been genuine activities in water. Furthermore, there is catching the self, catching, being caught by catching, and being caught by the way. Priest Decheng abruptly left Mount Yao and lived on the river. There he produced a successor, the wise sage of the Huating. Is this not catching a fish, catching a person, catching water, or catching the self? The disciple seeing Decheng is Decheng. Decheng, guiding his disciple, is his disciple. It is not only that there is water in the world, but there is a world in water. It is not just in water. There is also a world of sentient beings in clouds. There is a world of sentient beings in the air. There is a world of sentient beings in fire. There is a world of sentient beings on earth. There is a world of sentient beings in the phenomenal world. There is a world of living beings in a blade of grass. There is a world of sentient beings in one staff. Wherever there is a world of living beings, there is a world of Buddha ancestors. Examine the meaning of this. Therefore, water is the true dragon's palace. It is not flowing downward. To consider water as only flowing is to slander water with the word flowing. This would be the same as insisting that water does not flow. Water is only the true thusness of water. Water is water's complete virtue. It is not flowing. When you investigate the flowing of a handful of water and the not flowing of it, full mastery of all things is immediately present. There are mountains hidden in treasures. There are mountains hidden in swamps. There are mountains hidden in the sky. There are mountains hidden in mountains. There are mountains hidden in hiddenness. This is complete understanding. An old-time Buddha said, "Mountains are mountains, waters are waters." These words do not mean mountains are mountains. They mean mountains are mountains. Therefore, investigate mountains thoroughly. When you investigate mountains thoroughly, this is the work of the mountains. Such mountains and waters of themselves become wise persons and sages. Everyday activity. Kajo. In the domain of Buddha ancestors, drinking tea and eating rice is everyday activity. This, having tea and rice, has been transmitted over many years and is present right now. Thus, the Buddha ancestors' vital activity of having tea and rice comes to us. Priest Dogan asked Todze, "It is said that the thoughts and words of the Buddha ancestors are everyday tea and rice. Besides this, are there any other words or phrases for teaching?" Todze said, "Tell me, when the emperor issues a decree in his territory, does he need the emperor's Yu, Tang, Yao, or Shun from the ancient past?" As Dayang was about to open his mouth, Todze covered it with his whisk. "While you were thinking, you already received 30 blows." Dogan was then awakened. He bowed deeply and began to leave. Todze said, "Wait, Reverend." Dogan did not turn around, and Todze said, "Have you reached the ground of no doubt?" Dayang covered his ears with his hands and left. From this, you should clearly understand that the thoughts and words of Buddha ancestors are their everyday tea and rice. Ordinary coarse tea and plain rice are the thoughts of the Buddhas. Because the Buddhas prepare tea and rice maintain them. Accordingly, they need no powers other than this tea and rice, and have no need to use special powers as Buddhas. Investigate the expression, "Does he need Emperor Yu, Tang, Yao, or Shun from the past?" You should leap over the summit of the question. Besides tea and rice, are there any other words or phrases for teaching? You should try to see whether leaping is possible or not. The great master Wuji of Shurto said, "I have built a grass hut where no coins are kept. Having had my rice, I am ready for a leisurely nap." Having had rice, words come, words go, words come and go, filled with the Buddha ancestors' thoughts and words. Not to have rice is not to be filled. Yet the point of having had rice and a leisurely nap is actualized before having rice, while having rice, and after having rice. To understand that having rice lies only in the domain of having had rice is the mere study of 4 or 5 pounds of rice. My late master taught the assembly. He said, "I heard that a monk asked Baizhang, 'What is an extraordinary thing?' Baizhang said, 'Sitting alone on Dashiong Peak is extraordinary.' The assembly cannot move him. For now let him totally sit." Today, if someone were to ask me, "What is an extraordinary thing?" I would say, "Is anything extraordinary? Do you know what it means? The bowl of Zhengzi has moved, and I'm having rice in Tiantung." In the domain of Buddha ancestors, there is always something extraordinary. Sitting alone up on Daxiang Peak, being allowed to totally sit, is itself an extraordinary thing. Even more extraordinary is the bowl of Jingzi has moved, and I'm having rice in Tiantong. Each and every extraordinary activity is simply eating rice. Thus, sitting alone on Daxiang Peak is just having some rice. The monk's bowl is used for having rice, and what is used for having rice is the monk's bowl. Therefore, it is the bowl of Jingzi, and it is having rice in Tiantong. Being filled is to know rice. Eating rice is to be filled. To know is to be filled with rice. To be filled is to continue eating. Now, what is the monk's bowl? I say it's not wood, and it's not black lacquer. Is it an immovable rock? Is it an iron person? It's bottomless. It has no nostrils. One mouth swallows the empty sky. The empty sky is received with your palms together. My late master once taught the assembly at the Buddha Hall, when hunger comes, have rice. When fatigue comes, sleep. Furnace and bellows, each covers the entire sky. When hunger comes is the vital activity of a person who has had rice. A person who has not had rice cannot have hunger. Since this is so, a person who gets hungry every day is someone who has had rice. Understand this. When fatigue comes means that there is fatigue in the midst of fatigue. It springs forth complete from the summit of fatigue. The entire body is turned immediately by the activity of the body. To sleep is to sleep using a Buddha eye, a Dharma eye, a wisdom eye, an ancestor eye, a pillar and lantern eye. My late master once accepted an invitation and went to Jingzi Monastery in Linan Prefecture. He ascended the seat and said, "Half a year, just having rice and sitting on one peak. This sitting cuts through thousands of layers of misty clouds. One sudden clap of roaring thunder. Spring in the mystic village. Apricot blossoms are red." The teaching of the Buddhas who transmit the Buddha's lifelong practice is entirely just having rice and sitting on one peak. To study and practice the inheritance of their wisdom is to bring forth the vital activity of having rice. Half a year sitting on one peak is called having rice. You can't tell how many layers of misty clouds this sitting cuts through. However sudden the roar of thunder, the spring apricot blossoms are just red. Mystic village means red through and through right now. This is having rice. Wan Peak is the name of a mountain that represents Riyan Monastery. My late master once taught the assembly at the Buddha Hall of Riyan Monastery. Inconceivable golden form wears a robe and has rice, so I bow to you. Go to sleep early and wake up late. Ha! Discussing the profound, expounding the inconceivable, endless. What I completely avoid is thinking that I am teaching something. You should immediately penetrate this. Inconceivable golden form means wearing a robe and having rice. Wearing a robe and having rice is inconceivable golden form. Don't wonder who is wearing it. Don't say whose form it is. Speaking this way is complete expression, and this is the meaning of, "So I bow to you," and "I have already had rice. You have just bowed to the rice." And this is because I completely avoid thinking I am teaching something. Priest Da'an of the Fu region ascended the seat and taught the group. I've been at Mount Gui for 30 years and have been eating Mount Gui's rice and shitting Mount Gui's shit. I have not studied Guishan Zen, but just see a single old water buffalo. When it wanders off the road and begins grazing, I yank it back. When it trespasses onto other people's rice fields, I whip it. In this way, I have been taming it for a long time. Such an adorable one. It understands human speech, and now it has changed into a white ox. All day long, it is walking round and round in front of us. Even if we try to drive it off, it won't leave. Clearly, you should accept this teaching. 30 years of pursuit in the assembly of the Buddha ancestors is having rice. There are no other pursuits. If you bring forth this activity of having rice, invariably you will be able to see one buffalo. The Master Jiao Zhou asked a newly arrived monk, "Have you been here before?" The monk said, "Yes, I have been here." The master said, "Have some tea." Again, he asked another monk, "Have you been here before?" The monk said, "No, I haven't been here." The master said, "Have some tea." The temple director then asked the master, "Why do you say, 'Have some tea' to someone who has been here, and 'have some tea' to someone who has not?" The master said, "Director." When the director responded, the master said, "Have some tea." And Jiao Zhou's word "here" does not mean the top of the head, the nostrils, or Jiao Zhou. Since "here" leaps off of "here," a monk said, "I have been here," and another said, "I have not been here." It means, "What is now?" I only say, "I have been here, I have not been here." So my late master said, "In your picture of the wine shop, who faces you, drinking Jiao Zhou's tea?" Thus, the everyday activity of Buddha ancestors is nothing but having tea and rice, having coffee and toast. Painting of a rice cake, Gabyo. All the Buddhas are realization, thus all things are realization. Yet no Buddhas or things have the same characteristics, none have the same mind. Although there are no similar characteristics or minds, at the moment of your actualization, numerous actualizations manifest without hindrance. At the moment of your manifestation, numerous manifestations come forth without opposing one another. This is the teaching from the past. Don't use the measure of oneness or difference as your criterion. So it is said, to penetrate one thing is to penetrate countless things. To penetrate one thing does not take away its inherent characteristics. Just as penetration doesn't limit one thing, it does not make one thing unlimited. To try to make it unlimited is a hindrance. When you allow penetration to be unhindered by penetration, one penetration is myriad. One penetration is one thing. Penetrating one thing is penetrating myriad things. An old-time Buddha said, "A painting of a rice cake does not satisfy hunger." Those in cloud robes and mist sleeves, the Zen monks, who study this statement, as well as the bodhisattvas and shravakas who come from the 10 directions, differ in name and position. The skin and flesh of divine heads or of demon faces in the 10 directions differ, some thick, some thin. This statement has been studied by the old-timers and the present Buddhas. Nevertheless, it has become the mere chatter of seekers living in little huts and under trees. When they transmit their teaching, they say, "This statement means that studying the sutras and the commentaries does not nourish true wisdom. Or they suppose it means that to study the sutras of the three vehicles, or the one vehicle, is not the way of perfect enlightenment. To think that this statement, a painting of a rice cake does not satisfy hunger, means that expedient teachings are useless, is a great mistake. This is not the correct transmission of the ancestors' teaching. It obscures the words of the Buddha ancestors. If you do not understand this one Buddha's phrase, who could acknowledge that you have thoroughly understood the words of others? To say, a painting of a rice cake does not satisfy hunger, is like saying, to refrain from all unwholesome actions, and to respectfully practice wholesome actions. It is like saying, what is it that thus comes? It is like saying, I am always intimate with this. You should look at it in this way. There are few who have even seen this painting of a rice cake, and none of them has really understood it. How is this so? When I inquired of a few skin bags in the past, they had never questioned or thought about this matter. They took it as someone else's gossip. Know that a painted rice cake is your face after your parents were born, and your face before your parents were born. A painted rice cake made of rice flour is neither born nor unborn. Since this is so, it is the moment of realization of the way. This can't be understood by the limited view that a painted rice cake comes and goes. The paints for painting rice cakes are the same as those used for painting landscape paintings. For painting landscapes, blue and red paints are used. For painting rice cakes, rice flour is used. They are painted in the same way. They're examined in the same way. Accordingly, painted rice cakes, spoken of here, means that sesame rice cakes, herb rice cakes, milk rice cakes, toasted rice cakes, millet rice cakes, and the likes are all actualized in the painting. You should understand that a painting is all-inclusive. A rice cake is all-inclusive, and the truth is all-inclusive. In this way, all rice cakes right now are nothing but a painted rice cake. If you look for some other kind of painted rice cake, you'll never find it. You'll never grasp it. A painted rice cake at once appears and doesn't appear. This being so, it has no mark of old or young, and no trace of coming or going. The phrase, does not satisfy hunger, means this hunger, not the ordinary matter of the 12 hours, never encounters a painted rice cake. Even if you were to eat a painted rice cake, it would never put an end to this hunger. Rice cakes are not separate from hunger. They are not separate from rice cakes. These activities and teachings cannot be given away. Hunger is a single staff, maneuvered horizontally and vertically through 1,000 changes and 10,000 forms. A rice cake is wholeness of body and mind actualized. A rice cake might be blue, yellow, red, and white, as well as long, short, square, and round. When mountains and waters are painted in a picture, blue, green, and red paints are used. Strange rocks and wondrous stones are used. The 4 jewels and the 7 treasures are used. Rice cakes are painted in the same manner. When a person is painted, the 4 great elements and the 5 constituents, the skandhas, are used. When a Buddha is painted, not only a clay altar or lump of earth is used, but the 32 marks, a blade of grass, and the cultivation of wisdom for incalculable eons are used. As a Buddha has been painted on a single scroll in this way, all Buddhas are painted Buddhas, and all painted Buddhas are actual Buddhas. You should examine a painting of a Buddha and examine a painting of a rice cake. Which one is the black stone tortoise and which is the iron staff? Which is form and which is mind? Pursue this in detail. When you penetrate this matter, The coming and going of life and death is just a painting. Unsurpassed enlightenment is just a painting. The entire phenomenal universe and the empty sky are nothing but paintings. An old-time Buddha said, "Attaining the way, 1,000 snowflakes disappear. Painting the blue mountains, several scrolls appear." This is an utterance of great enlightenment, actualized practice in the endeavor of the way. Accordingly, at the moment of attaining the way, blue mountains and white snow are painted on countless scrolls. Motion and stillness are nothing but a painting. Our endeavor at this moment is brought forth entirely from a painting. The 10 names and the 3 cognitions are just painting on a scroll. The virtues, the powers, the methods, the noble path, just painting on a scroll. And if you say that a painting is not real, then the 10,000 things aren't real. If the 10,000 things aren't real, then the Buddha's teachings aren't real. As the Buddha Dharma is real, a painting of a rice cake is real. The great Master Guangjin of Yunmen once was asked by a monk, "What do you say about going beyond Buddhas and surpassing the ancestors?" The master replied, "A sesame rice cake." You should examine these words. When this sesame rice cake comes forth, an old teacher gives expression to going beyond Buddhas and surpassing the ancestors. An iron man asks this question, and the students understand it. Thus, this expression is complete. Opening the matter and hurling it back as a sesame rice cake is itself 2 or 3 painted rice cakes. Yunmen's is a statement that goes beyond Buddhas and surpasses the ancestors, an activity that enters Buddhas and enters demons. My late master said, "A tall bamboo and a banana appear in a painting." This phrase means that things beyond measure are brought together in a painting. A tall bamboo is long. Although it is moved by yin and yang, the months and years of the tall bamboo move yin and yang. The months and years of yin and yang are beyond measure. Although the great sages understand yin and yang, they cannot measure it. Yin and yang are all-inclusive phenomena, all-inclusive scale, and the all-inclusive way. Yin and yang have nothing to do with views held by those outside the way or those in the 2 vehicles. Yin and yang belong to the tall bamboo. They are the passage of time of the tall bamboo, the world of the tall bamboo. All the Buddhas of the 10 directions are the family of the tall bamboo. The whole heaven and earth are the roots, stem, branches, and leaves of the tall bamboo. That makes heaven and earth timeless. This makes the oceans, Mount Sumeru, and all the worlds of the 10 directions indestructible. A walking stick and arched bamboo staff are both old and not old. A banana has earth, water, fire, wind, emptiness, mind, consciousness, and wisdom as its roots, stems, branches, leaves, flowers, fruits, colors, and forms. Accordingly, the banana wears the autumn wind and is torn in the autumn wind. We know that it is pure and clear, and that not a single particle is excluded. There is no muscle in the eye. There is no pigment in the paints. This is emancipation right here. Emancipation is not a matter of time. It's not concerned with the discussion of some specific moment or instant. Taking up this understanding, make the earth, water, wind, and fire your activity. Make mind, consciousness, wisdom your great death. In this manner, the activities of the house have been passed on with spring, autumn, winter, and summer as furnishings. Now, the fluctuations of the tall bamboo and the banana are a painting. Those who experience great awakening upon hearing the sound of bamboo, whether they are snakes or dragons, are all just paintings. Do not doubt it with the limited view that separates ordinary from sacred. That bamboo pole is just long. This pole is just short. This pole is just long. That pole is just short. These are all paintings. The painted forms of long and short always accord with each other. When you paint something long, it cannot be without painting something short. Thoroughly investigate the meaning of this. Because the whole world and all phenomena are a painting, human existence comes out of a painting, and the Buddha ancestors come out of paintings. Since this is so, there is no remedy for satisfying hunger other than a painting of a rice cake. Without painted hunger, you never become a true person. There is no understanding other than painted satisfaction. In fact, satisfying hunger, satisfying no hunger, not satisfying hunger, not satisfying no hunger, cannot be attained or spoken of without painted hunger. For some time, let's study all of these as paintings of rice cakes. When you understand this meaning with your body and mind, you'll master the ability to turn things and to be turned by things. If this is not done, the power of the study of the way is not yet realized. To enact this ability is to actualize the painting of enlightenment. Only Buddha and Buddha. Yui Butsu, Yo Butsu. Buddha Dharma cannot be known by a person. For this reason, since olden times, no ordinary person has realized Buddha Dharma. No practitioner of the lesser vehicles has mastered Buddha Dharma. Because it is realized by Buddhas alone, it is said, only a Buddha and a Buddha can thoroughly master it. When you realize the Buddha teachings, you do not think, this is realization just as I expected. Even if you think so, realization invariably differs from your expectation. Realization is not like your conception of it. Accordingly, realization cannot take place as previously conceived. When you realize Buddha, Dharma, you do not consider how realization came about. You should reflect on this. What you think one way or another before realization is not a help for realization. Although realization is not like any of the thoughts preceding it, this is not because such thoughts were actually bad and could not be realization. Past thoughts in themselves were already realization. But since you were seeking elsewhere, you thought and said that thoughts cannot be realization. However, it is worth noticing that what you think one way or another is not a help for realization. Then you are cautious not to be small-minded. If realization came forth by the power of your prior thoughts, it would not be trustworthy. Realization does not depend on thoughts, but comes forth far beyond them. It is helped only by the power of itself. Know, then, that there is no delusion and there is no realization. When you have unsurpassed wisdom, you are called a Buddha. When a Buddha has unsurpassed wisdom, it is called unsurpassed wisdom. Not to know what it is like on this path is foolish. What it is like is to be unstained. To be unstained does not mean that you try forcefully to exclude intention or discrimination, or that you establish a state of non-intention. Being unstained cannot be intended or discriminated at all. Being unstained is like meeting a person and not considering what he looks like. Also, it is like not wishing for more color or brightness when viewing flowers or the moon. Spring has the tone of spring, autumn has the scene of autumn. There is no escaping it. So when you want spring or autumn to be different from what it is, notice that it can only be as it is. Or when you want to keep spring or autumn as it is, reflect that it has no unchanging nature. That which is accumulated is without self. No mental activity has self. The reason is that not one of the four great elements or the five skandhas can be understood as self or identified as self. Therefore, the form of the flowers or moon in your mind should not be understood as being self, even though you think of it as self. Still, when you clarify that there is nothing to be disliked or longed for, then the original face is revealed by your practice of the way. An old-time teacher said, "Although the entire universe is nothing but the truth body of the self, you should not be hindered by this truth body. If you are hindered by the Dharma body, you will not be able to turn freely, no matter how hard you may try. But there should be a way to be free from hindrance. What then is the way for all people to be free from hindrance? If you cannot say clearly how to free all people, you will soon lose even the life of the Dharma body and sink in the ocean of suffering for a long time." If you are asked in this way, how can you answer so as to keep the truth body alive and avoid sinking in the ocean of suffering? In that case, say, "The entire universe is the Dharma body of the self." When you say that the entire universe is the Dharma body of the self, words cannot express it. When words cannot express it, should we understand that there is nothing to be said? Without words, ancient Buddhas said something. There's birth in death, there's death in birth. This is not so because you make it so, but because the Dharma is like this. Therefore, when the Buddha turns the wheel of the teaching, there is insight such as this and expression such as this. Know that it is also like this when the Buddha manifests a body to awaken sentient beings. This is called awareness of no birth. To say the Buddha manifests a body and awakens sentient beings means that awakening sentient beings is the manifestation of the Buddha body. In the midst of awakening sentient beings, don't pursue manifestation. Seeing manifestation, don't look about for awakening. An old-time Buddha said, "The entire universe is the true body. The entire universe is the gate of liberation. The entire universe is the eye of Vairochana. The entire universe is the truth body of the self." The true body means your own true body. Know that the entire universe is your own true body, which is not a temporary body. If someone asks you why we do not usually notice this, say, "Just reflect within yourself that the entire universe is the true body." Or say, "The entire universe is the true body. You already know this." Also, "The entire universe is the gate of liberation," means that you are not entangled or captured. What is called the entire universe is undivided from the moment, the ages, the mind, and words. This limitless and boundless experience is what we call the entire universe. Even if you seek to enter or go through this gate of liberation, it can't be done. Why is this? Reflect on the question raised. If you intend to seek outside what it is, nothing will be attained. To say, "The entire universe is the eye of Vairochana," means that all Buddhas have a single eye. Don't suppose that a Buddha's eye is like a human eye. Human beings have two eyes. But when you say a human eye, you don't say 2 eyes or 3 eyes. Those who study the teaching shouldn't understand that the eye of a Buddha the eye of Dharma, or the celestial eye, is like the two eyes of human beings. Understand there is only a Buddha's single eye, and that is itself the universe. A Buddha might have 1,000 eyes or 10,000 eyes, but we say that the whole universe is the one eye of Vairochana Buddha. It is not mistaken to say that this eye is one of the many eyes, just as it is not mistaken to say that a Buddha has only one eye. The Buddhas have many kinds of eyes. 3 eyes, thousands of eyes, 84,000 eyes. And learn that the entire universe is the truth body, the law body of the self. To seek to know the self is invariably what all living beings wish for. However, those who see the self are rare. Only Buddhas know the true self. People outside the way regard what is not the self as the self, but what the Buddhas call the self is the entire universe. Therefore, there is never an entire universe that is not the self, with or without our knowing it. On this matter we defer to the words of the old-time Buddhas. Long ago, a monk asked an old master. He said, "When hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of objects come at you all at once, what should be done?" The master replied, "Don't try to control them." What he means is that in whatever way objects come, don't try to change them. Whatever comes is the Buddha Dharma, not objects at all. Don't understand the master's reply as merely some brilliant admonition. Realize that it's the truth. Even if you try to control what comes, it can't be controlled. An old-time Buddha said, "The mountains, rivers, and earth are born at the same moment with each person." All of the Buddhas of the 3 worlds are practicing together with each person. If we look at the mountains, rivers, and earth when a person is born, his or her birth does not seem to be bringing forth further mountains, rivers, and earth on top of the existing ones. Yet the ancient Buddha's word cannot be mistaken. How should we understand this? Even if you do not understand it, you should not ignore it. This is how to understand. Is there anyone who knows what his birth in its beginning or end is like? No one knows either birth's end or its beginning. Nevertheless, everyone is born. Similarly, no one knows the extremities of the mountains, rivers, and earth, but all see this place and walk here. Don't think with regret that the mountains, rivers, and earth aren't born with you. Understand that the old Buddha teaches your birth is not separate from mountains, rivers, and earth. And all the Buddhas of the 3 worlds have already practiced, attained the way, and completed realization. How to understand that those Buddhas are practicing with us? Examine a Buddha's practice. A Buddha's practice is to practice in exactly the same manner as the whole universe and all beings. If it's not a practice with all beings, it can't be a Buddha's practice. This being so, all Buddhas, from the moment of attaining realization, practice the way together with the entire universe and all beings. You may have doubts about this, but the old-time Buddha's word was expounded in order to clarify confused thinking. Don't think that the Buddhas are other than you. According to this teaching, when all the Buddhas of the 3 worlds arouse the thought of enlightenment and practice, they never exclude our body and mind. To doubt this is to slander them. When we reflect quietly, it appears that our body and mind has been practicing together with all the Buddhas of the 3 worlds, and has together with them aroused the thought of enlightenment. When we reflect on the past and future of our body and mind, we cannot find the boundary of self or others. By what delusion do we believe that our body and mind is apart from all Buddhas of the three worlds? Such delusion is groundless. How then can delusion hinder the arousing of the thought of enlightenment and the practicing of the way by all the Buddhas of the three worlds? Thus, understand that the way is not a matter of your knowing or your not knowing. A teacher of long ago said, "Chopping down is nothing other than chopping down. Moving about is beyond discussion. The mountains, the rivers, and the earth are the entirely revealed body of the Dharma King." A present-time person should study this phrase of the teacher of old. There is a Dharma King who understands that the body of the Dharma King is not different from chopping down, just as mountains are on earth and the earth is holding up mountains. When you understand, a moment of no understanding does not come and hinder understanding, and understanding does not break no understanding. Instead, understanding and no understanding are just like spring and autumn. However, when you don't understand, the pervasive voice of Dharma does not reach your ears. In the midst of the voice, your ears dally about. But when you understand, the voice has already reached your ears. Samadhi has emerged. Know that no understanding cannot be discerned by a self, and the Dharma King's understanding is just like this. In the Dharma King's body, the I is just like the body, and the mind is the same as the body. There is not the slightest gap between mind and body. Everything is fully revealed. Similarly, you should understand that in illumination and discourse, the Dharma King's body is revealed. There's been a saying since old times, "No one except a fish knows a fish's heart. No one except a bird follows a bird's tracks." Yet those who really understand this principle are rare. To think that no one knows a fish's heart or a bird's track is mistaken. You should know that fish always know one another's heart, unlike people who do not know one another's heart. But when the fish try to go up through the dragon gate, they know one another's intention and have the same heart, or they share the heart of breaking through the 9 great river bends. Those who are not fish hardly know this. Again, when a bird flies in the sky, beasts do not even dream of finding or following its track. As they do not know that there is such a thing, they can't even imagine this. However, a bird can see tracks of hundreds and thousands of small birds having passed in flocks, or tracks of so many lines of large birds having flown south or north. Those tracks may be even more evident than the carriage tracks left on a road or the hoof prints of a horse seen in the grass. In this way, a bird sees birds' traces. Buddhas are like this. You may wonder how many lifetimes Buddhas have been practicing. Buddhas, large or small, although they are countless, all know their own traces. You never know a Buddha's track when you are not a Buddha. You may wonder why you don't know. The reason is, while Buddhas see these tracks with a Buddha's eye, those who are not Buddhas don't have a Buddha's eye, and they only notice the Buddha's attributes. All who do not know should search out the track of the Buddha path. If you find footprints, you should investigate, are they really the Buddha's? On being investigated, the Buddha's track is known, and whether it is long or short, shallow or deep, is also known. To illuminate your track is accomplished by studying Buddha tracking. Accomplishing this is Buddha Dharma. Twining vines, Kato. At the assembly on Vulture Peak, only Mahakashyapa, through realization, received Shakyamuni Buddha's treasury of the true Dharma eye unsurpassable wisdom. By a direct transmission of correct realization through 28 generations, it reached Venerable Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma went from India to China and entrusted the treasury of the true Dharma Eye, unsurpassable wisdom, to great master Huike, and confirmed him as the second ancestor. Bodhidharma once studied with Venerable Prajnatara, and through realization directly received the admonitions of the Buddha and the bones of the way. In realization, he attained the source through the source, and made it the root of branches and leaves. Although there are a number of sages who try to study, by cutting off the root of twining vines, the complicated affairs of the phenomenal world, they do not regard the cutting of twining vines with twining vines as cutting. Also, they do not know twining vines entangled with twining vines. Furthermore, how can they understand inheriting twining vines through twining vines? Those who notice that inheriting Dharma is just a mess of twining vines are rare. There is no one who has learned it, and there is no one who has spoken about it. How is it possible for many to have realized it? My late master in China said, "Gourd vines entangle with gourd vines." This teaching has never been seen or heard in the various directions of past and present. My late master alone spoke it. Gourd vines entangle with gourd vines means that Buddha ancestors master Buddha ancestors. Buddha ancestors merge with Buddha ancestors in realization. This is transmitting mind by mind. Bodhidharma once said to his students, "The time has come. Can you express your understanding?" Then one of the students, Dao Fu, said, "My present view is that we should neither be attached to letters nor be apart from letters, and allow the way to function freely." The ancestor said, "You have attained my skin." The nun Zongqi said, "My view is that it is like the joy of seeing Akshobhya Buddha's land just once and not again." The ancestor said, "You have attained my flesh." Dao Yu said, "The four great elements are originally empty, and the five skandhas do not exist. Therefore I see nothing to be attained." The ancestor said, "You have attained my bones." Finally, Huike answered by bowing 3 times, stood up, and returned to where he was. The ancestor said, "You have attained my marrow." Thus he confirmed Huike as the second ancestor and transmitted to him Dharma and robe. Investigate these words of Bodhidharma. "You have attained my skin, flesh, bones, and marrow." These were his words. All 4 students had attainment and understanding. Each one's attainment and understanding is skin, flesh, bones, and marrow, leaping out of body and mind. Skin, flesh, bones, and marrow, dropping away body and mind. However, those who have not yet received correct transmission think that the ancestors' words, skin, flesh, bones, and marrow, are not equal in shallowness and depth, and because the views of the 4 students vary, one may seem to be closer than the others. They think that skin and flesh are maybe not as close as bones and marrow. They think that the second ancestor was acknowledged as attaining the marrow because his view was better than those of the others. People who speak in this way have not yet studied with Buddha ancestors and do not have transmission of the way. You should know that Bodhidharma's words, skin, flesh, bones, and marrow, do not mean that one understanding is closer than another. Even if there are superior or inferior views, in the ancestor way, there is only attaining the self. It means that neither the phrase, "You have gotten my marrow," nor the phrase, "You have gotten my bones," is more essential than the other for guiding a person in holding up grass, dropping grass. It's like holding up a flower. It's like transmitting a robe. From the beginning, Bodhidharma's confirmation of each one was equal. Although the ancestors' confirmation was equal, the four views were not necessarily equal. However varied the four views are, the ancestors' words are just the ancestors' words. In fact, words and understanding don't necessarily match. For example, Bodhidharma said to the four students, "You have attained my skin," and so forth. Had he hundreds or thousands of students after the second ancestor, he would have spoken hundreds or thousands of words. There should be no limit. Because he had only 4 students, he spoke of skin, flesh, bones, and marrow. But the words not spoken, and yet to be spoken, should be many. You should know that even to the second ancestor he could have said, "You attained my skin." Even saying, "You attained my skin," he could have transmitted the treasury of the true Dharma I to Hui Ke as second ancestor. It does not go by the superiority or inferiority of attaining the flesh or attaining the marrow. And even to Dao Fu or Dao Yu or Zong Qi he could have said, "You have attained my marrow." Even though they attained the skin, he could have transmitted Dharma to them. The ancestor's whole body and mind is the ancestor. Skin, flesh, bones, and marrow. It is not that the marrow is close and the skin is far. Now, to receive the seal of "You have attained my skin" by having the eye of study is to fully attain the ancestor. There is an ancestor whose whole body is skin, and one whose whole body is flesh, and one whose whole body is bones, and one whose whole body is marrow. There is an ancestor whose full body is mind, an ancestor whose full body is body, an ancestor whose full mind is mind. There is an ancestor whose full ancestor is ancestor, and an ancestor whose full body is attending myself yourself. In this way, when these old teachers appear together and speak to hundreds and thousands of students, they might say, "You have attained my skin." Even if the teachers in hundreds and thousands of words indicate skin, flesh, bones, and marrow in this way, people outside will inevitably think superficially about skin and flesh and bones and marrow. If there had been just 6 or 7 students in Bodhidharma's community, he might have said, "You've attained my mind, you've attained my body, you've attained my Buddhahood, you've attained my eye, you have attained my realization. This is the moment when you are now an ancestor, and this is the time when you are now Hui Ke." So, examine the meaning of attaining. You should know that there is, "You have attained myself. I have attained yourself. Attaining myself yourself. Attaining yourself myself." Upon studying a teacher's body and mind, if you say that inside and outside are not one, or that the entire body is not the full body, you are not in the land where the Buddhas appear. To attain skin is to get the bones, the flesh, and the marrow. To attain bones, flesh, and marrow is to get skin, flesh, and face. It's to understand not only that all the worlds of the 10 directions are the true body, but that they are skin, flesh, bones, and marrow. In this way, you attain your Buddhist robe, you attain the teaching. Words are bits and pieces leaping out. Teacher and disciple practice mutually. What is heard is bits and pieces leaping out. Teacher and disciple practice mutually. Teacher and disciple practice mutually is the twining vines of the Buddha ancestors. Twining vines of our teaching is the life stream of skin, flesh, bones, and marrow. Taking up a flower and winking is twining vines. Breaking into a smile is skin, flesh, bones, and marrow. Study further. The seeds of twining vines have the power of dropping away. Branches, leaves, flowers, and fruit of twining vines do and do not interpenetrate one another. So Buddha ancestors appear, and the fundamental point is actualized. The great master Jiaozhou taught his group, Mahakashyapa transmitted to Ananda. Now say, to whom did Bodhidharma transmit? A monk said, well, the second ancestor Huike attained his marrow. How about that? The master said, do not slander the second ancestor. And then he said, if Bodhidharma means someone who has reached the outside attains the skin, someone who has reached the inside attains the bones, then tell me, what does someone who has reached even deeper inside get? The monk said, what does attaining the marrow mean? Jiaozhou said, just know about skin. There's no marrow to depend upon in my body. The monk said, well, what is marrow? The master said, at that place you don't feel the skin. Then you should know. When you don't even feel the skin, how can you feel the marrow? When you feel the skin, you can attain the marrow. Thus you should study the meaning of, at that place you don't feel the skin. When a monk asked, what does attaining marrow mean? Jiaozhou said, just know the skin. There's no marrow to depend upon in my body. Where you know the skin, there's no need to search for the marrow. This is truly attaining the marrow. Being so, the question, the second ancestor attained his marrow, how about that? Appeared. When we penetrate the occasion of Mahakashyapa transmitting to Ananda, Ananda hides his body in Mahakashyapa, Mahakashyapa hides his body in Ananda. Therefore, at the time of meeting for transmission, the practice of exchanging face, skin, flesh, bones, and marrow can't be avoided. Because of this, Jiaozhou said, now say, to whom did Bodhidharma transmit? When Bodhidharma gives transmission, he is Bodhidharma. When Huike, the second ancestor, attains the marrow, he is Bodhidharma. By studying the meaning of this, Buddha teaching continues to be Buddha teaching to this day. If not, Buddha teaching has not reached to this day. Pursue the meaning of these words for yourself and for others. Jiaozhou said, if Bodhidharma means someone who has reached the outside gets the skin, someone who has reached the inside gets the bones, then tell me, what does someone who has reached even deeper inside get? You should directly understand the meaning of outside and inside. When you discuss outside, skin, flesh, bones, and marrow are all outside. When you discuss inside, skin, flesh, bones, and marrow are all inside. This being so, these four Bodhidharmas altogether mastered hundreds and thousands of myriad bits and pieces beyond skin, flesh, bones, and marrow. Don't suppose that you cannot go beyond marrow. You can go beyond 3 pieces, 5 pieces. This teaching of Jiaozhou is a Buddha's words. It is not what other masters like Linji or Dushan, Guishan, Yunmen either reached or dreamed of. How could they talk about it? Some careless elders of recent times do not even know it exists. If you were to tell them about it, they would be shocked. The Zen master Mingjue of Shuido said, Jiaozhou, Muzhou, both of the Zhous, are ancient Buddhas. The words of Jiaozhou, an old Buddha, are realization of Buddha Dharma, intimate words of himself. The former teachers admired Jiaozhou as an old-time Buddha, and the latter Buddha ancestors admired Jiaozhou also as an old-time Buddha. Thus we know that he is an ancient Buddha, beyond Buddhas of past and present who go beyond themselves. In this way, The meaning of twining vines of skin, flesh, bones, and marrow is a standard of, you have attained myself, as taught by an ancient Buddha. It is said that in the end, Bodhidharma, the first ancestor, returned to India. I have learned that this is wrong. What Sung Yun saw on the road as Bodhidharma could not have been actual. How could Sung Yun have discovered Bodhidharma's destination? It is correct to learn and understand that his ashes were laid to rest in Mount Xiongzhi after he passed away. Going beyond Buddha. Bukko Joji. The Master Dongshan once taught the assembly concerning realization through the body of going beyond Buddha. I would like to talk a little. A monk said right away, "What is this talk?" The Master said, "When I talk, you don't hear it." The monk said, "Do you hear it, sir?" The Master said, "Wait till I don't talk, then you hear it." The words spoken here, going beyond Buddha, originally came from Master Dongshan. Other Buddha ancestors have studied his words and realized through the body going beyond Buddha. You should know that going beyond Buddha is neither causality nor fruition. However, there is realization through the body and complete attainment of you don't hear it at the moment of talking. If you do not get beyond Buddha, you do not realize through the body going beyond Buddha. Without talking, you do not realize through the body going beyond Buddha. Going beyond Buddha and talking neither reveal each other nor hide each other, neither give to nor take from each other. This being so, talking brings forth going beyond Buddha. When going beyond Buddha is actualized, you do not hear. You do not hear means Buddha going beyond Buddha is not heard by the self. At the time of talking, you do not hear. You should know that talking is not stained by either hearing or not hearing. It is not concerned with hearing or not hearing. You are concealed within not hearing. You are concealed within talking. It is like meeting a person and not meeting a person, being thus and not thus. When you talk, you don't hear. The meaning of not hearing is that you aren't hindered by the tongue, are not hindered by the ears, are not drilled by the eyes, are not shielded by body and mind. This is not hearing. Don't try to take this up and regard it as talk. Not hearing is not talk. It is just that at the time of talking, you don't hear. The old-timers' words, "When I talk, you don't hear it," mean that talking from beginning to end is like wisteria vines entangled with each other. Talking is entangled with talking. It is permeated by talking. The monk said, "Do you hear it, sir?" This doesn't mean he is asking if the master hears the talking. He's not asking about the master or his talking. Instead, the monk is asking whether he should study direct hearing as the master talks. That is to say, he is asking whether talking is talking and hearing is hearing. Even if you can say something about it, it's beyond your speech. Examine the words of the Reverend Dongshan. Wait till I don't talk, then you hear it. At the moment of talking, there is no direct hearing. Direct hearing comes forth at the moment of not talking. It's not that you unfortunately miss the moment of not talking and must wait for not talking. Hearing is not merely observing. It is true observation. It's not at the moment of direct hearing that talking goes away and is confined. It's not at the time of talking that direct hearing hides its body in the eyes of talking and resounds like thunder. It's just that you do not hear at the time of talking. You directly hear at the time of not talking. This is the meaning of saying, "I would like to talk a little." and realization through the body of going beyond Buddha. That is to realize through the body directly at the time of talking. This being so, Master Dongshan said, "Wait till I don't talk, then you hear it." However, going beyond Buddha is not before the 7 Buddhas. It is the 7 Buddhas going beyond. The great Master Wu Bun taught the assembly, "You should know someone going beyond Buddha." A monk asked, "Who is someone going beyond Buddha?" The master said, "Not Buddha." Later, Yunmen interpreted this. He said, "The name is unattainable, the form is unattainable, therefore he is, quote, not." Baofu said, "Buddha not." Fa Yun also said, "Provisionally he is called Buddha." The Buddha ancestor going beyond a Buddha ancestor is Reverend Dongshan himself. The reason is that though there are many other Buddhas and ancestors, they have never dreamed of the words going beyond Buddha. If this is spoken to Deshan or Lin Ji, they will disregard it. Neither Yan To nor Xue Feng would get hold of the fist, even if they were to crush and grind their bodies. The reverend ancestors' words, realization through the body of going beyond Buddha, and I would like to talk a little, and you should know someone going beyond Buddha, cannot be fully realized merely by practice and enlightenment through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 eons, or 100 great eons. Only those who study the inconceivable road could realize it. But do know, there is someone going beyond Buddha. This is the full activity of rousing the intention. You should understand going beyond Buddha by taking up an ancient Buddha and raising a fist. To see through this is to know someone who goes beyond Buddha and someone who goes beyond not Buddha. The words of Dongshan don't mean that you should be someone who goes beyond Buddha or that you should meet someone who goes beyond Buddha. He just means that you should know that there is someone who goes beyond Buddha. The key to this barrier is not knowing someone who goes beyond Buddha and not knowing someone who goes beyond not Buddha. Someone who goes beyond Buddha in this way is not Buddha. When you are asked what is not Buddha, you should consider. You don't call him not Buddha because he precedes Buddha. You don't call him not Buddha because he follows Buddha. You do not call him not Buddha because he surpasses Buddha. He or she is not Buddha merely because she is going beyond Buddha. Not Buddha is so called because Buddha's face is dropped away. Buddha's body and mind are dropped away. The Zen master Ku Mu taught the group, "As I know about going beyond Buddha, I have something to say. Answer now, my good students. What is going beyond Buddha? This man has a child who does not have sense organs and lacks the 7 consciousnesses. He is a great barbarian, a kind of a not Buddha. When he meets a Buddha, he kills the Buddha. When he meets an ancestor, he kills the ancestor. The heavens cannot deal with this person. Hell doesn't even have a gate to let him in. All of you, do you know this person?" After waiting for a while, he said, "If you don't connect directly, it's like talking a lot in deep sleep." Not having 6 sense organs can be described as, the eyeballs have become beads of tallow, the nostrils are bamboo pipes, and the skull has turned into a shit dipper. What is the meaning of all this? In this way, the 6 sense organs are not there. Because there are no 6 sense organs, he has gone through the forge and the bellows and has become a metal Buddha. He has gone through a great ocean and become a clay Buddha. He has gone through the fire and has become a wooden Buddha. Lacking the 7 consciousnesses means this person is a broken wooden dipper. Although he kills a Buddha, he does meet the Buddha. Because he meets a Buddha, he kills the Buddha. And if he tries to enter the heavens are annihilated. If he goes towards hell, hell will burst immediately. If he meets face to face, his face breaks into a smile and there is no direct connection. Although he is in deep sleep, he talks a lot. Understand that this means all the mountains and the entire land know the self. Jewels and stones all crushed into pieces. You ought to quietly study and pursue this teaching of Zen Master Kumu. Don't neglect it. Now the Zen Master Hongjue of Mount Yunju went to study with Dongshan. Dongshan asked him, "What is your name?" Yunju said, "Dao Ying." Dongshan said, "Say something beyond that." Yunju said, "When I say something beyond, I am not called Dao Ying." Dongshan said, "When I was with Yun, we spoke just like this." Examine in detail the words between this master and disciple. When I say something beyond, I am not called Dao Ying, is Dao Ying's going beyond. Understand that in addition to usual Dao Ying, there is someone beyond who is not called Dao Ying. From the moment when I say something beyond, I am not called Dao Ying, is actualized, he is truly Dao Ying. However, you should not say that he is Dao Ying when he is going beyond. When he was asked by the Master Dongshan, "Say something beyond that," even if he had replied, "When I say something beyond, I am called Dao Ying," it would still be words of going beyond. Why is it so? Dao Ying immediately leaps into the top of the head and reveals his own body. Since he hides his own body, his form is revealed. Zen Master Bunji of Caoshan studied with Reverend Ancestor Dongshan. Dongshan said, "What is your name?" The monk from Cao Mountain said, "Bunji." Dongshan said, "Say something beyond that." Cao Mountain said, "I will not say." Dongshan asked again, "Why will you not say?" Cao Mountain said, "No name Bunji." Dongshan approved it. It is not that there is nothing to say in going beyond, but here there is no saying. Why did he not say? Because of no name Bunji. Therefore, saying in going beyond is no saying. No saying in going beyond is no name. Bunji of no name is saying going beyond. Because of this he is Bunji, no name. Thus there is no Bunji. No name drops away. Bunji drops away. Zen Master Baoji of Mount Pan said, "The single path of going beyond. 1,000 sages, no transmission." The single path of going beyond is the utterance of Baoji alone. He did not say Buddha going beyond or someone going beyond, but he said the single path of going beyond. It means that even if thousands of sages appear all together, the single path of going beyond is not transmitted. No transmission means 1,000 sages protect that which is not transmitted. You may be able to understand in this way, but there is something further to say about this. It is not that 1,000 sages or 1,000 wise people don't exist, but that a single path of going beyond is not merely the realm of the sages or of the wise. The Zen Master Guangzuo was once asked by a monk, "What is going beyond Buddha?" He said, "To carry the sun and the moon on the end of a staff." This means you are completely covered by the sun and moon on top of a staff. This is Buddha going beyond. When you penetrate the staff that carries sun and moon, the whole universe is dark. This is Buddha going beyond. It's not that the sun and moon are the staff. on the end of a staff means the entire staff. The Zen master Dao Wu visited the assembly of Master Wu Ji at Shurto. Dao Wu asked him, "What do you say is the fundamental meaning of the Buddha teachings, the Buddha truth?" Shurto said, "Not to attain, not to know." Dao Wu said, "Is there some turning point in going beyond or not?" Shurto said, "The vast sky does not hinder white clouds from flying." Dao Wu once asked Shurto about the fundamental meaning of Buddha Dharma. This is not a question asked by beginners or those just recently started. Dao Wu asked this question when he was ready to understand the fundamental meaning if he heard it. And then Shurto said, "Not to attain, not to know." Understand that in Buddha teachings, the fundamental meaning is in the first thought as well as in the ultimate level. This fundamental meaning is not attaining. It's not that there is no aspiration for enlightenment, or no practice, or no enlightenment, but simply not attaining. The fundamental meaning is not knowing. Practice enlightenment is not non-existent or existent, but is not knowing, not attaining. The fundamental meaning is not attaining, not knowing. It's not that there's no sacred truth, no practice or enlightenment, just not attaining, not knowing. Dao Wu said, "Is there some turning point in going beyond or not?" It means that when the turning point is actualized, going beyond is actualized. Turning point is a provisional expression. The provisional expression is all Buddhas, all ancestors. In saying this, there is going beyond. Although there is going beyond, don't neglect not going beyond in saying this. The phrase, "The vast sky does not hinder the white clouds from flying." Those are Shurto's words. The vast sky does not hinder the vast sky. Just as the vast sky does not hinder the vast sky from flying, clouds do not hinder white clouds. White clouds fly with no hindrance. White clouds flying does not hinder the vast skies flying. Not hindering others is not hindering self. And it is not that self and others need or have no hindrance. None of these requires no hindrance or remains in no hindrance. This is the no hindrance brought out in the phrase, "The vast sky does not hinder the white clouds from flying." Right now, raise the eyebrow of the eye of study and see through the coming forth of Buddhas, ancestors, self, teachers, and others. This is a case of asking one question and answering 10. In asking one question and answering 10, the person who asks one question is the true person. The person who answers 10 is the true person. The great Master Huangbo said, "Those who have left home should understand things which have come from the past." The great Master Forong of Niu To, Oxhead, a student of the fourth ancestor, explains both vertical and horizontal, but does not know the key to the barrier of going beyond. With your own eyes and brain, you should discern the correct from the incorrect. Huangbo's words, "things which have come from the past," mean that which has been correctly transmitted from our Buddha ancestors. We call this the treasury of the true Dharma I, the inconceivable mind of nirvana. Although it is in yourself, you should understand it. Although it is in yourself, it's beyond your understanding. Those who have not received correct Buddha-to-Buddha transmission have never dreamed of it. Huangbo, as the Dharma heir of Baijiang, exceeds Baizhang, and as a Dharma descendant of Mazi, exceeds Mazi. In 3 or 4 generations of the ancestor school, there was no one who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Huangbo. Huangbo alone made it clear that old Niuto did not have 2 horns. The other Buddha ancestors had not noticed. The Zen master Farong of Mount Niuto was a respected teacher. He was a student of the 4th ancestor. His discourse, horizontal and vertical, when compared with that of Indian or Chinese sutra masters and treatise masters, was not less. But regrettably, he did not speak of the key to the barrier of going beyond. If you do not have the key to the barrier of things which have come from the past, how can you discern correct from incorrect in the Buddha teachings? You might end up just being someone who studies words and phrases. Therefore, the knowing, practicing, and realizing of the key to the barrier of going beyond is not something ordinary people can accomplish. Where there is true endeavor, the key is realized. Going beyond Buddha means that you reach Buddha, and going further, you continue to see the Buddha. It is not the same as sentient beings seeing Buddha. Therefore, if your seeing Buddha is merely the same as other living beings seeing Buddha, it's not seeing Buddha. If your seeing Buddha is merely the same as living beings seeing Buddha, it is seeing Buddha mistakenly. How can you experience going beyond? You should know that Huangbo's words, going beyond, cannot be understood by the careless people of these times. Their Dharma discourses cannot even reach to that of Farong. Even if their Dharma discourses equal that of Farong, they are merely Farong's Dharma brothers. How can they have the key to the barrier of going beyond? Other bodhisattvas of 10 stages or 3 classes can never have the key to the barrier of going beyond. How can they open and close the barrier of going beyond? This is the eye of study. One who has the key to the barrier of going beyond goes beyond Buddha, realizing through the body going beyond the Buddha.